Hello and welcome to our first episode of Power Talks. In this format, we would like to give artists the possibility to not only talk about music, but also talk about social and political topics.
'Cause this ain't no John Hughes movie where the girl gets the guy. You look right through me every time you walk by.
My name is Barry. You may know me from my LGBTQ plus blog Hollywood Tramp, where I also talk about social topics, double standards in the society. But enough about me. Let me introduce you to my two guests today. Lisa Peck, a young, talented singer, songwriter, producer living in Vienna. Grüß Gott.
Hello, hi.
Hello, nice to have you here. So Lisa, singer, songwriter, producer. When do you find time to read even a book?
Well, I started making like little schedules, like actually to take breaks. Like at the moment, we're all stuck at home, basically working, and I'm in front of my laptop, my computer in the studio, like 24/7, and it becomes really exhausting. So I try and like really stop myself and breathe for a minute and be like, okay, just get away from any screen and do something else. If it's like reading or painting or just going out for a walk or whatever, just taking breaks, really important.
And my next guest is singer and songwriter Macy Peters from England. And Macy, I was told that you have your own book club. So I was wondering, why aren't you the host today? You're like pro max level.
I am. I'm elite tier book club. No, I do have my own book club. I've had it for about a year now. It's really fun. It's really hard work, but I really enjoy it. And it's definitely a very new thing that I've had to learn about, interviewing and talking to authors, and not being interviewed, but being the interviewer is a very different skill set, but I really enjoyed it. It's a great time.
Great. So today we will talk about female empowering books. So Macy, would you like to start? Would you like to introduce us to your first book and tell us what it's about?
So I'm just going to start with the one, there's just one right in front of me. So I guess I'll start with that. It's called The Rules Do Not Apply. It's by Ariel Levy. And I mean, I'll read you the back because I feel like that does a good job. It's a memoir. She account of her life is doing its darndest to topple her, and her refusal to be knocked down will leave you shaken and inspired. It's basically a memoir of a woman, and it talks about it's relatively short, and it just talks about her life and her relationships rather, and sort of her journey through motherhood, I guess, but also the grief that comes with that, and womanhood and femininity and sexuality and relationships. It's relatively short, but and I read it a few years ago, and it just always really stuck with me.
What does she describe the difficulties of being a mother? Like what are the things that she finds difficult?
So with that, I mean, I don't want to give too much away, but there are complications with her journey to motherhood, which is sort of a lot of the book. But I was also actually going to say, because there's a specific quote from this book that I actually wrote songs about, and I talk about it all the time. And it's almost like advice I give. So when people ask, like, what's the best advice you've ever been given, I always sort of think about this book, because there's a section where she's talking to another woman, an older woman who never had kids. And she goes, didn't you want to have kids? And didn't you want that experience? And this other woman is like, no, you can't get everything. Like, maybe I did, but you can't have everything. It's worded in a way that for me, like, really stuck with me. And there's sort of this like a positive inversion of a glass half empty sort of manifesto of being like, it's actually impossible to get every single thing you want in life. And I think once you accept that, there's a sort of lightness that comes with it, of being like, you just can't. And I think there's another thing on the back of this, which I think is true, is the journalist, so this woman's a journalist, Ariel Levy, reveals how her desire to have it all, the partner, the lover, the adventurous career, and the happy family was painfully blew apart. And I think it's a really interesting take on how, we're brought up to think you can have it all, and you can. And there's a lot of me that still believes that, but there's like a really interesting, like feminist take, I guess, on how you can't have it all sometimes, but how that's also just real life, and that doesn't make life any less important, and what you do get any less important.
Again, the book is called The Rules Do Not Apply. And I just want to
Yes.
throw in, each book we're going to talk about is available on every platform. So even if you want to buy it or you want to download it, it's we're not that exclusive as we look like we are.
There you go. It's really pretty.
So Lisa, are you ready to introduce us to your first book and telling us
Yeah.
what it's about?
Let's start with Harry Potter, because why not? It's one of my, so basically when I chose the Harry Potter books, and I meant all of them, like I don't mean a specific one, because I have been reading them when I was a kid, when I was a teenager. And actually, to be quite honest, it was the only book, or the only books, that really grabbed my attention, like that really, you know, made me feel like I could read for days, and I was in that kind of world. And I haven't, like, ever since, I haven't found a book that catches me the same way, which I find very sad, but it's like really one of my favorite books. Anyway, Hermione Granger, I mean, I think we all know her. She's this super cool kid. She's so clever, and she's a very talented magician. And basically I chose her as a character because I think it's just really important, thinking of the audience, like the main audience that watches the films, that reads the books, that reads articles about it. They are young women, like young children. And I think it's quite important to have, you know, these kind of role models in, you know, kids story. Like, I'm not saying like Harry Potter is only for kids, but there's, you know, a lot of kids watching the films and reading the books. So I think that's very important. I also put down, do you know Pippi Longstockings? You probably know.
Yes,
Langstocking.
I
Yes.
do. Oh my God. Yes, I used to dress up as her.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I feel like it's so important that we have these kind of really empowering female roles, female, you know, characters in books that are, you know, really strong. Like Pippi Longstocking is also like really physically strong. She's stronger than any men in her village, I guess. But you know, I think that's really important, because I looked up to Hermione, and I thought, and to Pippi as well, and I thought, you know, I want to be like her. And I thought, you know, studying became quite cool, reading became quite, you know, like as a superpower, you know, like knowledge is my superpower. And I think that's really important.
Why do you think Harry Potter isn't really on the spot when it comes to female empowerment? Is it because Harry Potter itself takes so much place?
I mean, yes, of course. But I guess, like, obviously the whole story is about Harry and his journey and Lord Voldemort. But I think I never thought of like as Harry being like the protagonist of the story and being like in a really, you know, like, oh, this is my story and I'm gonna tell you my story. Like, he really included his friends, and he could have never, you know, lived without his friends, including Hermione and Ron and lots of others. But yeah, I don't think so.
I think, yeah, I would agree. I think that, yeah, obviously Harry Potter was a hugely important book for so many people, and I think Hermione Granger was such an important role model growing up. I do find now it hard, obviously, in light of J.K. Rowling and the sort of transphobia and the constant, seemingly unrelenting wave of transphobia that was in the second half of last year. I find it sort of very hard to sort of combine the two, which I think it's you can't detract the importance that I think Hermione Granger played in a lot of young women's lives, but also it really, you read, I read the books under, well, I haven't read the books in a long time, but I would read them under a very different lens now, and I find it very difficult to sort of feel the same way I did about a lot of those characters and a lot of that book.
So I would have chosen, like, as a main, you know, female empowerment author, I would have chosen her as a really strong woman as well, like J.K. Rowling. But then obviously, like, this thing blew up Twitter, and so that changed everything.
So let us jump to the next one, Macy. Which is your second book, and what is it about?
My second book is called Exciting Times. It's by an author called Nisha Dolan. It was her first novel. We actually read it as the first book of my book club last year. And it very quickly became my favorite book. It's one of my top 3 favorite books ever. I'm now good friends with Nisha, and she's this really amazing young Irish woman. And the book, essentially, it centers around 3 characters. There's Eva, there's Julian, there's Edith. Is Eva right? I'm pretty sure. I'll check that. But Eva is an Irish woman who goes and becomes a teacher of foreign languages in Hong Kong. And it's basically about her and her 2 relationships, one with Julian and one with Edith. And it's really, I couldn't recommend it enough. I recommend it to absolutely everybody. And it's hard to explain. It's sort of almost no more than what I've just said. But I think it does such an amazing job of looking at the intricacies of relationships and of class and of sort of like emotional baggage and how that impacts how you sort of form relationships as you go on. And there's just, I really, really strongly related to Eva, who is the main character. And there was this one section again, which I always really remember. And it was Judith talking to Eva and saying to Eva, she was like, you want to believe you're special really bad, but you can't possibly be special in a good way. So you have to be special in a bad way. That's how you sort of get through life. And that's how you think about yourself. Whereas you're not everything you're describing to me as like evil, awful traits of yours are not. They're very widely had. It's not new. It's nothing revelationary. And I just always really remember that being like, oh my God, so accurate. Like we're all so obsessed with being special and being different. But it's true. None of us, I think that actually then sort of embodies itself in really bad thinking paths, maybe, because it's true, you can only be special in a bad way, and nobody's special in a bad way. Nobody's special at all. I have a very nihilistic opinion of all these books. I'm like, no one's special, nothing, you can't get everything. But yeah, so it's really amazing.
Cool. Why does she say like she's special in a bad way, if I understood that right?
Yeah, so the main character is seemingly, it's the very classic of 2021 of has a god complex, but seemingly also thinks she's like the worst person ever in the world. Whereas she's neither. She's, she has her flaws, but she's also has many like positive attributes. But I think it's like Edith picks up a note to tell you like, you're not special in a bad way. You're great. But yeah, I think everything that this main character Eva thinks is truly awful about her. You actually, when you hear that sentence, you realize that it's not. It's actually very normal. Everything she does that she thinks is so terrible is very normal.
So Dolan, let me just ask you this one. Dolan is being hailed as the next big writer. She's compared to so many big names. So do you think that this book is like the relationship novel for her generation?
Yes, I mean, I maybe, that's a big statement, but I do love this book, and I haven't read it since. And it actually, when I read it the first time, I remember talking to a friend and being like, this book is like, it's stressing me out. I felt like such a personal attack. That I would really put me on edge when I was reading it. But I love it. I recommend it to literally everybody I know. It's basically my personality in a book. It's everything I love about books. It's everything I love about writing. Each sentence is like a little punch. Like she just constantly punches you. It's such smart writing. So yes, I would say so.
Oh, brilliant. I really want to read that one.
Okay, so it's called Exciting Times. Just keep that in mind, everyone at home. So Lisa, it's your turn.
All right. I think I'm going to start with my second book, is We All Should Be Feminists. And it's to sum up, it's about like the misconception of the word feminism. And she, I hope I'm pronouncing the name right, Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. Please correct me if I'm wrong. But,
I don't know it either. So
right. So she basically talks about that and how there's still like such an inequality between like men and women, and she also proposes a solution for that, which I really liked.
What's the solution?
Well, obviously it's quite difficult, but she basically says that it all comes down to education, which I really liked, because when I think of, so I'm not talking about the kind of education we get at school, like, you know, like remembering historical dates and facts and biology and solving math problems. It's the kind of education that, you know, starts at home and that you get from your parents. And it's more like focusing on the children's abilities instead of like, you know, pushing them into stereotypes. You're a boy, you have to do that and earn money, and you're a girl, you have to play with dolls and then learn how to cook. So that's the kind of education that she's talking about. And I think that's so important because it's still happening everywhere and it's so annoying. I mean, like, you know, the pushing into stereotypes kind of thing. And it's like, even when I think like in Austria, like sometimes I feel like we live in a little bubble, and like I feel like, okay, I got the education that I wanted, and I went to London and did my studies, and I'm so, you know, happy about that. But that doesn't mean that, you know, inequality isn't happening where I am right now. And I think from a place where she comes from Nigeria, she's so brave to, you know, question her own culture, because Nigerian culture is so has very clear kind of gender roles, and she questioned that and spoke up against that and to that, and wrote the book.
I mean, she's like a big pop star of feminism, right? I mean, even Beyonce uses her speeches and her performances and stuff like that. So I think that she believes in a better world if we somehow cancel the stereotypes about gender. Do you think so too?
Yeah, definitely. If that's the thing, if we just, she says, there's this one story in the book where she's talking about a family she knows, and it's like, they're the parents, and there's two children, a boy and a girl, and they're siblings, and the boy's hungry, and the mum goes to the girl and she's like, go and cook your brother some food, but she hates cooking, and the boy would be perfectly capable to prepare himself a meal, and it's actually quite a skill for boys as well. But you know, it's like, why does the girl have to do the cooking for him? It doesn't make any sense, and we have to break out of these stereotypes. I was thinking, like, this isn't happening in my friendship circle, but but still it's happening everywhere in the world. Like, it's happening in Austria. It doesn't mean just because all my friends don't think so, or don't, you know, believe in those stereotypes, it doesn't mean that it's not happening. So I think it's quite an eye-opener to read that book, because I feel like even myself, I have to be honest, like sometimes I'm a little bit in a bubble where I'm like, I know everything's fine, but it's not.
Yeah, there's another part where she says that you have to be smart, but not too smart, otherwise you threaten the man. To intimidate
the men.
So crazy. I mean,
that is really so crazy.
Great book. So Macy, you're familiar with that book, or do you hear it for the first time? So this is something that you're gonna discuss next week in your book club.
I've not read the book. I've heard a lot about it. I think I've actually maybe seen a part of a TED Talk, which is what you're talking about. And yeah, I've heard a lot about it, and I think it's definitely sounds like something I would really enjoy. I'm not good at reading non-fiction. So which I definitely need to get better at, because it's really important and useful in expanding, as you were saying, you know, expanding your knowledge and what you know about, because I also live very much in a bubble of you know, where I'm from and what's around me, and so I definitely do need to do it, but I'm historically not great at reading nonfiction.
I think was it my mum who told me? She told me that 50 years ago, like in Austria, women had to get their husband's signature and allowance to go to the bank and open a bank account. And I was like, Mum, no way. Like, and that was like 50 years ago. Like, if you told me that was 300 years ago, I'd be like, all right, different times, and you know, it's different now. But that was 50 years ago in Austria, and that's crazy.
That's very crazy.
So the book is called We Should All Be Feminists. So get that one on your checklist, everyone at home. And now, Macy, it's your turn, right?
It is. I think this is my last book.
Oh my
last
goodness.
book. Last book is a book called Just Kids. It's by Patti Smith. And this actually isn't, this is another memoir. I've done 2 memoirs. And this is, a memoir of Patti Smith, who's like a rock star, legend, icon. And it's a memoir of her time in New York, especially about a close friend of hers who's an art fashion photographer called Robert Mapplethorpe. And it talks about their relationship a lot, but it also really talks about her journey in New York in, I guess, when is it, the 70s maybe? And it's really, I mean, it's really beautiful and it's an amazing read. I read it last year in the middle of quarantine and it's like the perfect escapism because it just takes you to this like crazy, like the Chelsea Hotel. But it also, she's definitely, I think, was sort of like a pioneer of feminism and of female empowerment and of owning your life and your body and the music that you make and the art that you make. And I think she was really a pioneer of that. And while the book, I think I almost love it more, it doesn't necessarily explicitly talk about that. It talks about her life and her relationships and her family. But I think it's like subtextually, like it's under every page, the sort of like the ownership she has over her decisions in her life. And, you know, it talks about how she had a baby very young and how, but it talks about how that as a part of her greater journey, it's not focused on just one thing, which I think is amazing because it really speaks to the sort of multifaceted version of every woman's life and how you're not defined by one thing or one decision you make or one part of your life. And so I think it's not explicitly about female empowerment, but I immediately thought of it when I was trying to think of books for this.
Cool. I think I saw a video of Patti Smith busking in New York. Like I love the way she's just like so active and like she goes on the streets and you know tells everyone basically what to do. Like she does this in such a cool way and it's like she's so passionate about things. I love that about her. I don't actually know much about her, so
you should read the book. You should absolutely read the book. I really recommend it. But she just feels very powerful still, and she's an older woman now, and I feel like she's really embraced that, which is definitely counter to 90% of society. And I just think she's still got a lot of power and conviction and still feels very much like her own woman and like she always has been, which is important.
So do you think that, I mean, she used to live a life that wasn't, let's say, normal for a woman at that time. Do you feel like her story would be different today? Would her lifestyle still be remarkable?
I think so. I think it's impossible to take that sort of book out of the context, which is like New York in the 70s, because it's like another planet now. But I think that she's such a remarkable person and such an inspiration that I truly think she would have done game-changing things, whatever generation she was born in.
Yeah, so the book is called Just Kids, Patti Smith. Now it's time for the final book. Lisa, it's your turn to close the show.
So I am a huge fan. I'm going to continue with this music vibe. I'm a big fan of Edith Piaf. I don't know if you know her. She's quite famous, I guess. So basically, I chose her because she became like such a big female artist. Like actually, I think the biggest, most successful female artist in France during a really male-dominant time. Like she lived during World War II, and I can imagine that must have been horrible. So that's the second book I chose. The third, sorry. So, let me tell you about like Edith Piaf. She's basically I chose her because she's a rebel. Like she grew up on the streets. Her mother was an alcoholic. Her father left her because he wanted to go and do his career. He was working in a circus, I guess. And so basically she was on her own because her mother didn't really take care of her. And one day she was 4 years old, and this woman took her into a brothel and basically took care of her. And she lived there for probably 10 years, or I think 12 years or something. So she grew up in a brothel with all these women working there. So I think she didn't quite know what was going on, but I think she got a very strong sense of like, you know, like how women have to stick together, and probably that's probably one of the reasons why she's so like rebellious, and like why she always stood up to men and be like, no, you know, you can come this far but not further. And yeah, she made it in such a crazy time, like to actually be, you know, a very, very successful female singer. Like in the beginning, she wasn't even allowed to go to clubs without a male guardian, but she always got her way. And I think that's just so cool. Like, and even when she got more successful, like people were calling her names, calling her like a bad housewife, even though she wasn't married, or like a bad woman for seducing men and doing whatever she wants. And she was, you know, like one of her friends was gay, and they didn't quite like that. So she was like, she had such a bad reputation for a while, but she didn't care. And she was just like this diva who's just like, you know, she just owns everything.
So can you tell us again what the name of the book was?
Well, basically, it's like a biography. So it's Edith Piaf by Monique Lang, I think. And where is it? There we are. And it's yeah, it's. I think that's in German, yeah. But I'm sure. Actually, there's a love letter in there. Oh my god! But,
Obsessed. It's very Edith Piaf that you have a love letter in her memoir.
It is. Do you know what? This is so beautiful. Oh my god, I can't believe him. No, actually, so she was madly in love. I love the way Edith Piaf loved, because once she was in love, she was so passionate about it, and she fell in love with this boxer from America, Marcel Cerdan, and they wrote love letters to each other, and they kept it up. I've actually got books somewhere. Anyway, and it's just such a wild story. Like, they loved with such passion, and I take a lot of inspiration out of their love letters, because it's so beautiful, the way, like the amount they love each other. Like, it's crazy.
So ladies, thank you so much for taking time. Before we come to an end, let me just quick have a little chat with you about your music. I mean, you are two talented, great musicians. What is coming next? Can each one of you, Macy, let me start with you. Can you tell us, is there a new single coming? At which point are you right now?
I do. Yes, I have an album coming this year. I can't say when, but it is coming. I'm very excited about it. It's almost finished. And then in the meantime, I have so much. I'll have a new single in the next couple months. I have some other projects that are coming out soon that I'm very excited about, and that I've worked really hard on, and that no one knows anything about. So that's very fun. And yeah, I've got a lot coming. It's a good year to be a Maisie Peters fan. I keep saying to people, but I know people don't believe me because I haven't done anything yet. But I'm like, I promise. Give me time.
So busy. Maisie Peters, thank you so much for being a part of this.
Thank you for having me. It was a fun time.
It was a fun time, yes. And Lisa Peck, what about you? Dropping your next album too on the same date as Macy? Are we going to see a fight?
Yes. So right after Macy and my single that is coming out next week. No, I am. I'm releasing new music. There's going to be new music. There's going to be an EP, and just focusing on writing new music. So I think that's a perfect time to do so, because we're in lockdown again. But yeah, I just can't wait to release my new single, and it's gonna come out really soon.
Yes, we need more music, especially at that time now. The stands need new music. So thank you so much, Lisa Peck. We will connect or tag your profiles here in the show notes. And for everyone at home, don't forget to subscribe our YouTube channel and to comment what you think about the books or about our guests today. And we will see you sometime soon, hopefully. Thanks for watching.
Amazing. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Everything you do is so